John, Anik, and Kenny Florian podcast. John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
I f***ing love him. I can't get enough of him.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy, out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole. There are a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
Headshot, bang. Oh, done. Going down to miss, I couldn't do it. The odds that I couldn't do it. Look at me now. Level it. Half a pound. Headshot, down.
All right, good to have you with us. Episode 457 of the Anik and Florian podcast. So, Kenny, as we were just about to get going here, we tape our show on StreamYard, and there is a button you can click on the video setting. And if I'm breaking news to some of you homely individuals out there, this is huge. But you can touch up your own appearance, right? And I am in a brand new studio that thankfully is working today. And I hit this touch up my appearance. And I mean, you know, I got nice cameras, Ken. I got nice equipment, but it looks like I painted my face. And if I looked like this, I think I would have, you know, more than 7% of my Instagram followers would be female.
Well, this is great because this means I can fire my makeup artist that's here for my shows. Now, I don't have a makeup artist for the show, but it makes things a little easier, man. I can see myself a little bit better. I'm not as ugly, so that's good. I like it. Thank you for the tip.
I might have to just click this button. You know, I wish I could just click this button and just walk into my life, you know?
In real life, yeah, exactly.
Benjamin Button with this touch up my appearance button on StreamYard. But great to have you guys with us here as we sit a few days away. Thank the heavens from the UFC's first live event of this year, 2024. We're going to get into Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis just a little bit here off the top of the show. But the bulk of today's show will be devoted to, of course, the first live event of the year, Magomed Ankalaev and Johnny Walker. We are also scheduled to be joined by Mike Malott, competing at UFC 297, and also the bantamweight GOAT consensus, Dominick Cruz. And Brian Petrie, of course, for the main event challenge. We'll reveal the new rules and all of that coming up today on the DraftKings YouTube channel, the DraftKings Network as well. Also still undecided. I shouldn't say undecided, but we're trying to get schedules aligned. There is a chance this Saturday night, live on the Anik and Florian Podcast YouTube channel, me and Ken Flo, for the main event between Magomed Ankalaev and Johnny Walker. Now, Ray Longo potentially would be a part of that mix as well, but herein lies the issue. Anybody out there listen to episode 456? Because I did. And, we got Lucky the dog. We had major issues for the second week in a row, Ken Flo, with Ray's dog. So
Yeah. Lucky has been officially fired. John and I took a meeting, and Lucky, he's out of here, sadly.
Gosh, we'll see how it goes, but maybe we'll have extra content for you guys on the Anik and Florian Podcast YouTube channel this Saturday night. Raymond and Lucky TBD.
Can we get some feedback to see if people would like to see that? Like, hit us up on Twitter or something, right? To see, do we want to go that route and see if people would like to hear? I'm sure they would, but I don't know. Let's see.
I think I have heard from some fans who would rather stay home for a pay-per-view so they can listen to the commentary than to actually attend our live event. You know, there was a time with UFC radios that you could actually have the best of all worlds, but we'll see. Yeah. If you guys would be interested in us sort of watching maybe the final two fights of the night this weekend with you, let us know and we might just do that. We'll see if we can pry Ken Flo away from all of his dependents. But all right, so Sean Strickland, Dricus du Plessis. Now, there is some emotion on the front end of this fight. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a factor for Sean come fight week nor fight night against Dricus du Plessis. But certainly much has been made of Sean Strickland's very thoughtful, powerful interview with Theo Vaughn and, how it might impact things in the lead up to UFC 297. Didn't know if you had anything on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Are we calling this a rematch? Is this a rematch? Was the first one a draw? I
see what you did there. See, I don't even know. I was asked by James Lynch recently, Kenny, like if that heightens things for this fight. And I guess maybe it does, but not for me. Like I love this fight stylistically. I love the preamble to this fight. I didn't need them fighting in the stands to want to fucking wet my beak with this one,
Yeah, well, both these guys are two guys that love to move forward. They bring the action. Really curious to see how it plays out at this stage of the game. I do not have someone that I'm leaning towards. I think both guys are absolutely capable of winning this fight. I think that, if I have one kind of thing to add in there, I think Sean Strickland late in this fight, I got to assume is probably going to be there, looking to finish a little bit later or maybe have a stronger finish than Duplessis. But that's not necessarily accurate either. Duplessis looked great in his last fight, that tremendous win against Whitaker. I think he brings a lot of pressure. He's going to look to try to take this fight to the ground, certainly capable and dangerous on the feet as well. And I think we're going to have to see Strickland counter-striking here in this one. This may be one of the few fights where we actually see Strickland have to back up for the majority of this fight. So fascinating for a lot of different reasons. These are two guys that are absolute beasts that are fighting in their prime right now.
Oftentimes I will look at the challenging fighter in a championship fight as they wait for the champion to make that walk. That was Sean Strickland's reality in Sydney, Australia back in September. And obviously a lot of things are going through your mind, I'd imagine, as a prize fighter. You've been there in that setting a few times, but Strickland got off to a great start and executed to near perfection, largely over 25 minutes against Adesanya. And I think that's a big feather in his cap moving forward. Certainly, I think a lot of us feel like in those championship rounds, maybe if the pendulum wasn't swinging his way, that maybe he could reverse course at that stage of the fight. Remains to be seen, how much confidence he derived from the Adesanya win. But gosh, not that was the night upon which he found his style. But this was a guy who for years was 17-1, 17-2, had a loss against Kamaru Usman, but otherwise had this perfect career. But I'm just saved his best for the night on which he needed it most. And now he has a hugely different challenge in Duplessis. It's a great fight. Press conference figures to be great. We're very excited about it. And we will have plenty more for that. On that, I should say, coming up next week, including full preview and predictions for UFC 297 live on pay-per-view. But right now, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL playoffs, is bringing you an offer that'll help make the playoffs absolutely electrifying. New customers can bet $5 on any game and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Playoff odds available now on DraftKings Sportsbook. Miami Dolphins down here in South Florida. They butchered the AFC East, but they play at the Kansas City Chiefs in one of the higher profile games of the weekend. Chiefs favored by 3.5. And then the first AFC game of the week. I'm interested in this one. Joe Flacco and the Browns are -2.5 at the Houston Texans on Saturday. Get yourself in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Not now, but right now. Use code AFPOD. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code AFPOD. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in New York. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. All right, 2024. New year is upon us. New main event challenge, but we always get started with the pronunciation of the week. So save your main event challenge imaging as we welcome on one of the fine members of this program. We haven't seen this man in a while, and it's good to see his shiny face.
Yes.
Brian Petrie.
Yes. No touch-up appearance here, boys. No, I laid off the button. Let me say one.
To hit it mid-video here.
Let's see. Here, I'll do it right now. Because I got something to say to the people. There it is. And we're maxed out. I look like a pretty little porcelain baby here. Let me say something right now. Last time you saw me, I gave a little speech and I said how thankful I was. I had a rough year personally. People thought I was done. People were like, "Oh, BP's off the show." Let me tell you something. Look at me, America, right now. Okay, you'd have to kill me and drag my 280-pound body out of here. I ain't fucking leaving. Let's go. 2024.
There it is. Brian Petrie is back and better than ever for 2024. Yes. We are thrilled to have you back. I've been so excited to talk to you guys on the air. And of course, we have a Brazilian Portuguese name to kick off 2024. Yes. But I have been jonesing to talk to you boys about the New Look Main Event Challenge and to have that conversation on the air. But before we do that, of course, we have to get to the pronunciation of the week. Before we do that, one thing I just briefly wanted to discuss. So Toronto, Ontario, Canada, UFC back there for the first time in a long time, January 20th, UFC 297. Now, there have been some high-profile losses to this fight card. Jan Blachowicz, Alexander Rakic, Dominic Reyes, Carlos Ulberg. Now, maybe I'm in the bubble where I hear some of these complaints from a vocal minority, but I would turn it over to you, Brian Petrie, an avid fan, albeit not a Canadian. You're not a Canuck. But like, I don't know, man. I get so excited for these pay-per-views that this is just a little blip for me. Like, I love some of those fights that we lost, and obviously they're big names. But, to what extent are you sort of bemoaning the fact that this card, at least on paper, isn't as big as some of the pay-per-views that will follow it in the ensuing months?
I get Canada's complaint because there hasn't been one in a while. Like, I get that. If they got like 4 year, there wouldn't be a peep. This is a great card. The main event's got some fucking heat on it. They fought in the crowd. They hate each other. That's new blood at 185 pounds, which you felt like we haven't had in a while. I'm super excited for that fight. And I'm obviously a little biased because my guy Chris Curtis is throwing down in there, undefeated on Canadian soil, might I add. So I'm happy. Listen, I'm through the roof that we're getting fights. I think this weekend's card's great. I think that card's great. I'm just ready. I get the Canadians who are great fans. They're amazing fans. Most of MMA Twitter is Canadian. They don't get a lot a year. But listen, this is great. It's going to be a great card. I think the main event now and so forth will get delivered. When you lose fights, it sucks, but I think Canada should be happy.
Per capita, Canadians are as loud as any fan base in mixed martial arts. And the action man, Chris Curtis, live on pay-per-view against Marc-Andre Barrio, Power Bar. So this is me and you head to head, essentially, Petrie. Power Bar, one of my teammates down here at the Institute of Human Performance. So, Chris Curtis, incidentally, a big Jason Anik guy, not a big John Anik guy. So it all works out. All right. We do have a pronunciation of the week. And I do want to get to it before we get to the main event challenge. So this is a Brazilian fighter, as I mentioned, and he will be competing to kick off the main card this weekend at the UFC Apex. And he will do that against Phil Hawes. He's the betting favorite. Brian Petrie, your first attempt at a pronunciation in 2024 starts now.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, there's two ends. There's an, E for the I. What are we going to do here? I'm just going to go excuse me. Let me start. Bruno Ferreira, because I know you like to hit the rock. So Ferreira.
All right, Cody, you have that file ready, my man?
Bruno Huck Ferreira. Bruno Huck Ferreira.
He's really Portuguese in that one.
Kenny, do you want to explain it to the masses once more on the R's?
Tell me, Ken.
I sure can. So anytime. So when you see an R at the beginning of a word, it's an H. If you see two R's together in the middle of the word of the name, then it becomes an H. If it's just one R, then it would be a R. So let's say Fajeda was with one R, it would be Ferreira. If it's with two R's, then it's Fajeda. So that's where a lot of people get it wrong. Commentators, announcers, as well. So, Brian, don't feel bad. You got it wrong, but you're a lot of people kind of do the same thing here. Is that okay? You agree with that, John Anik?
Precisely. But if there's one fan who I don't want to know that rule, it's actually Brian Petrie, because he's charged with the pronunciation of the week. But this is the perfect name to learn on it when it comes to Brazilian Portuguese, because you have a double R and then a singular R. So, Fajeda, the double R gives you that H sound. And Alex Pereira somewhere is telling you he does not have any double R in his name. All right. Exactly. Main event challenge presented by DraftKings Fantasy Sports. Check out what DraftKings has to offer this season with code AFPOD, because life's more fun when you're in on the action. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. All right. Main event challenge 2024. New rules. Both of these gentlemen will still be required to break down every fight on all 40-plus UFC main cards in 2024. They will also be breaking down between 50 and 75 individual preliminary fights over the course of the year. You guys are required to make a pick on every UFC main event. You are encouraged to make a pick on any fight that we break down and any fight that you feel particularly convicted upon. But in terms of the actual betting, here is the rub. Each man gets a budget of $1,000 each week to play on the fight card at DraftKings Sportsbook. Straight wagers and parlays are allowed. We think this is going to be fun. Kenny, you're player one. Brian, you are player two. There are no punishments. Cody and I are not involved. If you have any questions or comments, Brian, the floor is yours as the everyday sports bettor that you are. If you have any comments or questions, otherwise we'll proceed.
Just excited. No questions. We iron this out. I love it. I can't wait. And I think it'd be good for the audience to see like actual dollar amounts when Ken and I go, we want to put X amount on SoFighter. I think that'd be really great. And I can't wait. 2024, baby. Let's go.
All right, Ken Flo, any thoughts on the New Look Main Event Challenge before we spin this hog forward?
I like it. It would be nice if you gave us $1,000 every show to just kind of just as play money, right, Brian? Can we get that going? Or?
I'm not going to complain, Ken Flo. I'm not going to.
You guys want to do cash prize at the end of the year? I did say it's prize and not punishment. If you guys want cash,
sure. Let's throw some cash.
Like Bitcoin or something.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Now we're talking.
If you show up, though, at Ken Flo's front door, I'm not going to tell you what state he lives in with any other cryptocurrency. You might as well just spin it around. And
yeah, John.
All right, so we are going to break down the entire main card. It's UFC Fight Night, Ankalaev versus Walker 2, UFC Apex, Saturday, January 13th. And, man, it feels good to look at a UFC fight card for the first time in a while. Main card opener in the middleweight division, the aforementioned Bruno Ferreira, minus 118. Taking on Phil Hawes, minus 102. Hard to forget Ferreira's UFC debut. It was memorable by the knockout of Gregory Rodriguez in Rio. It came at this time last year, but then he got knocked out in July. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce Nursultan's last name, but that was the first pro MMA loss for Ferreira. Now he faces the former D1 wrestler Phil Hawes, who is 4-3 in the UFC. What do you have for us on this one, champ?
Man, MMA is so interesting, right? Because Phil Hawes, we've been seeing a little bit of Phil Hawes, right? He was like the only guy to step up and corner Dylan Dennis during the Logan Paul thing. He's in Thailand a lot. He's a great wrestler. Hopefully he was training some grappling with Dylan Dennis so we can work on that part of the game because the guy, he can't take a punch. He just can't. It's sad. It's unfortunate. When he got knocked out by Julian Marquez, I'm like, oh, you know what? He was gassed. That happens on the Contender Series. But he was in shape and ready to go when he fought Chris Curtis, ran into a left hand, got knocked out. Same thing happened against Elite. Same thing happened against Ikram. You know, and the guy gets hurt and he gets put out bad. Like, it's scary and it worries me, him fighting here. Hopefully he has a different game plan because Bruno can fucking crack. This guy, Bruno Smash, will knock your lights out in round one. That's what he wants to do. That's really his only path to victory, in my opinion. I think Phil Hawes is the better athlete. I think he's better everywhere. But Phil has a tendency to let's scrap it out. Let's throw in this phone booth, and he can't really take that. I like to see him be a little more around it, but I think Bruno's going to win. I like Bruno by knockout round one. That line is not available on DraftKings, so I'm going to take Bruno, and I'm going to take $100 on him as well. I like the number. It's a pick 'em fight. Remember, guys, I'm picking Petrie. Not really, but I am. I'm trying to get that going. So give me Bruno for $100. $100.
All right, and you can actually save all of your cash predictions for the end of the breakdown. Okay. So we'll get all your picks at the end of the program, but I will make a note that 100 of your dollars, and we love you getting after it right out of the chute, $100 on Bruno Ferreira. And you're right about some of the inconvenient truths for Phil Hawes in terms of the knockout losses. And Kenny, a lot of these visuals have not been great. I would submit to you the strength of schedule has been outstanding. I mean, good competition in all the UFC losses, albeit all by knockout. Chris Curtis, Roman Dolidze, Ikram Aliskerov. Two of those three guys, Kenny, are ranked. And the guy who isn't, that Brian mentioned, Ikram Aliskerov, would be favored. I looked at the top 15 today against a lot of these middleweights. So how does it go for Phil Hawes this weekend, Ken Flo, against Bruno Ferreira?
Gosh, I really don't know. There's been so much inconsistency on the side of Phil Hawes, and it's not because he's not talented. He's one of the more talented guys that I've seen compete inside the octagon. But as we know, talent doesn't always equal results, right? It can be your best friend or your worst enemy many times, especially if you're not developing it or if you're just relying on it. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case with Phil Hawes. However, I think that, as Brian alluded to, you have two major issues. It's his chin, right? His durability. And you have, I think, the mental game. I think that has hurt him sometimes. I don't know if it's him being overtaken by the moment, maybe him getting too emotional during fights, whatever it is. It's something he needs to kind of figure out, like now. And it's not always an easy thing to do so. He's really improved on the feet, man. His striking skills have really improved. Obviously has had that wrestling background. He knows how to take people down. He knows how to prevent takedowns. On the ground, I think he could certainly improve in regards to his submission game, maybe being off his back and things. But I don't see Bruno Ferreira being that much of a threat with his wrestling. Maybe he knocks him down. Maybe he gets kind of a lucky trip and things like that. And that would probably go bad for Phil Hawes. But I don't know. This is a tough one to pick. I think Ferreira certainly hits hard. I think he's dangerous, especially if he's supposed to, especially if he is going to land on the button of someone like Phil Hawes. He could definitely put him out. Both guys, have tendencies of getting sloppy during a fight. I think Phil Hawes is probably more technical in all areas, especially except for the submission game on the ground. So it's a tough one to pick, but I'm leaning towards Ferreira as well. I think at some point he will find the chin. I think he will find a way of making a little bit chaotic, and because of that, we'll get the win here.
Looks like an entertaining bout to kick off the new year for the combat sports leader. All right, next main CAD fight for us at bantamweight, 13th ranked Ricky Simón, -175. Mario Bautista, +145. Huge fight here, fellas, at 135 pounds. So Ricky Simón had won 5 in a row before he got stopped by Song Yadong in the main event last April. On the other side, Bautista, I think he figures to draw some interest on DraftKings +145 range. He has won 5 in a row, 3 of those by submission. I'm stunned he's not ranked yet, Petrie. Perhaps this will be the fight that gets him there. What are your thoughts on this one at 35? Simón the favorite, Bautista the dog.
You took the thoughts right out of my head. I can't believe Bautista's not ranked. I mean, he looks solid. The guy debuted against Corey fucking Sandhagen, and he's looked really well in all his fights. Even the ones he's lost have been just, he's got clipped or, whatever. Kid's a stud. He's getting big. He's ripped as shit. That Arizona lab that he's fighting out of is great, and his confidence is growing. I think, very timid early on in his career. His confidence is like, I can get taken down and get back up. My striking is elite. Simón, I feel like a disappointed father because I had a 5-unit whack on Simón over Song Yadong, and the minute he couldn't lay the takedown was the minute the fight was over for him, in my opinion. I hated seeing that. He couldn't get the takedown. He kept getting clipped, kept getting dropped. He's got to trust his hands more. I mean, I think, his chin is a little worrisome, in my opinion. He got dropped by Song Yadong, got knocked out by Uriah Faber. But, and Bautista can crack. Bautista, flying knees, kicks, punches. He's big, he's strong. His 56% takedown defense scares me. But every time he gets taken down, he gets back up and he lands a takedown of his own. I wish this was 5 rounds, if I'm being honest with you. I think Mario Bautista is getting disrespected. You're hanging a plus number on me. I'm taking the plus number in Mario Bautista, and I'm not looking back, baby. Give me Mario Bautista.
Interesting fight. I'm not surprised to see you take the bait there. Ken Flo, Ricky Simón, number 13 in the world, -175. I think for Simón, it'd be great if Merab Dvalishvili could elevate to championship status because of their history. He's got to get through Mario Bautista, though, to keep that conversation open. Kenny, what do you think about this one?
Very interesting fight. 2 guys that can get it done with the wrestling, can get it done with some striking. I think Simón is probably the more potent striker, though, when it comes to power. I think he just is going to hit a little harder. Mario Bautista doesn't quite have that same level of power, potency in his strikes. Puts together some good combinations, and has some solid wrestling. I don't see someone like Simón submitting Bautista, but may be able to get some good submissions. I don't know. Things could change if one is able to get on top of the other. I think both are a little weak on their back. No question about that. But I would be leaning towards Simón a little bit more. Bautista is a good striker. He's not a Song Yadong level striker. And I think because of that, Ricky Simón will learn from that last one, will know how to win some rounds. And as far as the grappling goes, who wins those exchanges, I'm not quite sure. I think I see it kind of being canceled out here on it going to the guy who can land more on the feet. I just see Simón being a little bit more active. I think where Bautista lacks a little bit is in volume. And I think that's where Simón can kind of win some rounds.
Ricky Simón has long been one of my favorite fighters on the roster. Just a lot of offense, a lot of the time from Ricky Simón. And I actually believe when I look at Simón and Bautista both, if things break the right way, excuse me, I know the division's loaded, but I actually think both guys could elevate to top 3, if not championship status, number 1 contender. So huge fight, at least for me as a fan at 35. All right, next one. Featured bout at lightweight, Jim Miller -120. Gabriel Mowgli Benitez, the even money underdog at +100. So for Jim Miller, 43rd UFC fight. Wow. 25-16 with a no contest dating back to his 2008 UFC debut. I remember Kenny and I on ESPN MMA Live in 2008 on a full screen graphic announcing that Jim and Dan Miller, the brothers, were coming to the UFC. That was nearly 16 years ago. Now he fights AKA's Mowgli Benitez. He's been on the roster for a while as well, Bri. Entertaining but inconsistent. Never won more than 2 straight in the UFC. Name-wise, this would be the biggest win of the career for Gabriel Benitez. Slightly the underdog here against Jim Miller. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have many rules, if any rules in this house. You can wear your shoes in my house. The fridge is open.
Wow. Shoes in the house.
Shoes in the house. Yeah. But guess what? You can't talk shit about Jim Miller in my house. My daughters know it. My wife knows it, right? This guy is a legend. I'm so impressed what he's doing, the wars he's been in, the Lyme disease, and he's still here and he still looks fucking good. I think this is a great matchup for him against Mowgli here. Mowgli's killer be killed. He's like, you know what? I'm standing in this fucking pocket. I'm going to try to kick you and break your ribs. That doesn't work. You're probably going to knock me out. I'm calling my shot here, boys. I'm the great Bambino, Babe Ruth. I'm calling my shot. I think what's going to happen in this fight, I think they're going to stand in the pocket. I think it's going to be a war. I think it's going to be nice for about a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes. Jim's going to clip him, jump on a neck, rear naked, guillotine something. We're looking at a club and sub here. Give me Jimmy Miller.
Nicely done. Jim Miller can be had right now on DraftKings -120, Ken Flo. Historically, it may sound trite, but these are the type of guys that Jim Miller beats, the type of fights that he wins. Your thoughts on him here, chasing a 26th UFC win against Mowgli Benitez?
Yeah, totally, John. And that's the way I see it. I think Jim Miller, with his forward pressure game, I think it's going to be able to back Benitez up. And the best part of Benitez's game is his kicking game. And I think if you're backing up, trying to look for kicks, that is the most difficult scenario for him, especially in a guy like Miller, who is going to be seeking that takedown. Miller tends to not lose fights where he is the better grappler. In fact, he submits those types of guys, and that's why I like him in this spot. Benitez is dangerous, but he's inconsistent. And I think that because of Miller's style and kind of aggressive style of backing guys up, generally speaking, not only is he dangerous with his striking when he's doing that, but he's able to kind of take away a lot of those kicking games, especially guys like Benitez. So I see him taking away the kicking game, eventually getting into that boxing range where he can get those takedowns, put Benitez on his back, whether it's an actual takedown or a knockdown like Brian Petrie was talking about. And from there, Jim Miller will not forgive.
All right, co-main event, men's flyweight division. Perhaps we determine Alexandre Pantoja's next opponent on this night. Perhaps not. But it's number 6, Manel Kape, -245. 5th-ranked Mateus Nicolau is +200. So at least in my circles, Kenny, I'll start with you here. You know, Kape is the man many people would like to see fight for the title. He has won 4 in a row. He has a lot of physical skills. Got to get through Mateusz, whatever you want to call him, Nicolau this weekend. Big one here at flyweight, Ken Flo. Any thoughts on it?
Yeah, and a rematch as well. And I think that while that first one was very close, I think Kape has some really simple adjustments that he can make in this fight here to win it. I think that he wasn't throwing a whole lot of volume in that fight. Didn't seem so comfortable at that stage of his UFC career. I think this is a completely different Manel Kape. I think he's firing in all cylinders. I think he is grown and matured in the UFC now, believes in his skills, needs to be able to stop that takedown. I don't think he wants to be on his back here against Nicolau. Nicolau's still going to be dangerous there. Nicolau's still going to be dangerous on the feet as well. I think Nicolau's best chance is trying to slow down Kape's footwork with leg kicks, calf kicks in particular, to try to slow him down. But if he's not able to do that, I see Kape winning these rounds handedly by staying busy, being versatile as a striker, being good on the counter, and just being sharp throughout this fight. If he's able to stay focused and keep this one on the feet, I think Manel Kape wins this one. But it should be a fun one. These are 2 highly skilled mixed martial artists, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. It should be a really good fight, and I'm glad it's getting this prominent placement. So Nicolau was in a title eliminator essentially not that long ago, right? Last April against Brandon Royval. He had won 4 straight fights, and now I don't know if it's by design, but Bri, he has had 9 months or so to clear the cobwebs underdog status here against Manel Kape?
There's a reason I go first in most of these, because it's hard to follow Kenny when he just said everything I want to say. Listen, I've been a Manel Kape fan for a long time. I'm driving the fucking bus right now, the bandwagon bus. Listen, it's getting crowded, right? This guy is getting a lot of fans right now, and he's the boogeyman. He's the absolute boogeyman at 125. When managers get the call for their fighters to fight these people, the first words out of the mouth is, fuck, really? All right, I'll run it by him. They don't want to fight this guy, right? He's confident, he's powerful, he's explosive. He is finally in a place where they're training him right. His mental's on point. I agree with Kenny. His first two fights in the UFC, Pantoja and Nicolau, he wasn't himself. Very hesitant. Was almost afraid of the takedown. He landed 61 strikes to Nicolau's 55. They both traded takedowns. I thought Kape won the fight, but it was very close. And Nicolau, he just really isn't my kind of guy. I don't know what it is, right? You know, some guy like feet. I don't like feet.
Okay. Yeah,
you know what I mean? He's just not, you know what I mean? It's just not for me. I get it, right? But you know, it's a little boring with me, and there's nothing that really separates him. Like, I don't know if I really want to see him versus Pantoja. I don't want to disrespect the guy, but I don't know if I want to see that, right? Necessarily. Yeah. And Raw Dog, you put it into that. Nicolau has been chinny in the past. He's been dropped in multiple fights. Raw Dog put him out. And Manel Kape, if he lands with one of those counters, because his counters are beautiful. They are lightning fast and sharp, and they don't miss the target. I think he gets a knockout here. I'm huge on Manel Kape. Give me Manel Kape. I think he'll be the champ by the end of 2024. Book it. Bang it. Let's go.
And I love just that chip on his shoulder, you know, mouthing off with Kai Kara France. And of course, Israel Adesanya. Manel Kape's undeterred. We'll see how it goes for him in the co-main event this weekend. All right, main event between top flight light heavyweight contenders. Magomed Ankalaev minus 455. Johnny Walker Blue is plus 350. Ray Longo is betting on Johnny Walker, he said on Monday. This is a rematch of a fight that ended unceremoniously. It was a no contest, as you guys know, in Abu Dhabi. That was October of last year. The illegal knee renders Walker unable to continue. Now, Ankalaev could have been DQ'd, but he does keep the unbeaten streak intact. He won 9 straight fights before that draw with Jan Blachowicz, and then, of course, the no contest. So it actually, Bri, has been a year and a half since Ankalaev has physically had his hand raised up. Right. How do you think he fares as a prohibitive minus 455 favorite this weekend?
I rewatched that first fight a lot. And the one thing I noticed is Ankalaev was having a hard time getting the distance on Walker, who's enormous, 6'5". And Johnny Walker was kicking his legs up. That inside leg kick was money for him. He saw what Blachowicz did. And then it wasn't until Ankalaev, like Johnny Walker kind of went down with a fake belly injury and then jumped up for a knee. And then it wasn't until the grappling where I'm like, well, that's where Ankalaev has to live here. He has to kind of maybe grapple Johnny Walker. We haven't really seen Johnny Walker off his back. He says he's Chimaev of the division. He says he can go 5 rounds, which I think he can. I think his cardio is going to be on point for being such a big guy. But I love where he's at in his life. He's married. He's settled down in Ireland. He's got a great coach for his mind, which I think Johnny Walker has all the physical tools. Just need to get that mind right. And the chin obviously worries me a little bit, you know. But, you know, Ankalaev at minus 455. And I know a lot of people bang on Ankalaev for being a little bit boring or whatever. I like Ankalaev. I think 205 is interesting with him in it. We kind of need this scary Russian dude who just doesn't lose in the division. But minus 455, yikes, spikes. No, I'm a value boy, baby. Give me plus 350, Johnny Walker. I think he can squeak out a decision. It's going to be close as long as he doesn't get clipped. But plus 350 is too hard to walk away from, J.A. Too hard, baby. Johnny Walker.
Kenny, what do you think? Magomed Ankalaev minus 455, Johnny Walker plus 350.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think that Johnny Walker is very dangerous. No question about that. If he catches you right, you'll probably be asleep. I also think that Ankalaev has a tendency of, you know, it takes him a little while. Once he gets in his rhythm, he's good. But sometimes, you know, it takes him a little bit to get the timing going. You know, to get comfortable with his opponent. Here in this rematch, second time out here, I think we should see a much better start from him. You know, you see the odds here, and I think it's just about right. You know, I think Ankalaev is a much better fighter. I think that there's less vulnerabilities in his overall game. I think he will find the chin of Johnny Walker, and when he does do that, I think he'll find the ability to put him out. I don't think Johnny Walker is the best grappler either. I think that If he's able to get top position and maybe take the back, he can certainly get the finish there. But I don't see him as a precision-based fighter in any area. Again, ton of potential. Physically, he's an absolute savage, very big for the division, very dangerous. But I think Ankalaev is that dude. He's just way more consistent for me, and the odds are definitely in his favor. But I like it. I think Ankalaev gets it done, and I think he should get it in convincing fashion here.
I'm all in to see Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev at some point in 2024. But first, we'll see what Johnny Walker has to say about all of that. All right. It has now come the time for you gentlemen to spend your $1,000. Bri, sounds like, excuse me, you want to put at least 100, at least 10% of it on Bruno Ferreira. So why don't you rifle through your $1,000 for me if you'd be so kind.
All right, so I got Bruno Ferreira. I'm trying to ignore that last name because I still can't fucking pronounce it. Give me him plus 100, right? Give me $100.
Minus 118 for 100. Okay.
Give me Mario Bautista for 2. Okay. Give me a little dose on Mario Bautista, and then I think this guy should be minus 300, 350. Give me Manel Kopp for $700. I think give me a 7. Whack on Manel Kopp. I think he should be way higher. I think he's going to dominate the fight.
All right. Some weeks I'm going to let you go right now and actually do Ken Flo's cash on the other side. But today is not one of those weeks, Brian. You're not going to have to watch the show back to get Ken Flo selections. Right. Kenny, you have $1,000. You could put the whole thing on Magomed Ankalaev to win 200. But what are you doing with your 1,000 Ken Flo on week 1?
I was considering that actually. What I'd like to do, I'd like to put $100 on Jim Miller.
Nice.
I'd like to put $200 on Manel Kopp.
Okay.
And I'll put the remaining on Magomed Ankalaev.
All right. All right. Well, we will update the totals next week at Brian Petrie MMA. Outstanding follow on X.com. It's great to have you back on the program. Hopefully the scoring system shows people just how sharp you individuals are. But Bri, buckle up because we got, I think, 8 or 9 fights to break down next week for UFC 297.
Can't wait. Can't wait, boys. Great to see your faces. Great to hear your voices. Let's do it, babe.
Nicely done. Good. Brian Petrie with us for the main event challenge. And in 2024, very exciting for me to see Ken Flo take $1,000 to the window every week. All right, well, Lucy is up in the nicotine pouch game with Breakers. Pouches packing a little something extra inside. So what are Lucy Breakers exactly? Well, if you know your pouches, you know the nicotine doesn't hit immediately, and neither does the flavor. Well, the brilliant minds at Lucy came up with a genius way to fix both problems at once. They put a mini liquid capsule inside each Breakers pouch. You grab a Breakers pouch, break the capsule, yes, with your teeth. Makes a really satisfying pop, actually. You put it in your lip and enjoy the immediate nicotine and flavor release. It's a new kind of pouch technology, and it is only available right now from Lucy. 100% pure nicotine, 6 delicious flavors. That includes unique ones like apple ice or espresso, and also some classics like mint or mango. So break up with your dusty gas station pouches and go to lucy.co/AFpod and use promo code AFpod to get 20% off your first order. Lucy offers free shipping and has a 30-day refund policy if you change your mind. That's lucy.co and use code AFpod to get 20% off. And as always, free shipping. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. All right, we are waiting on the former 2-time UFC bantamweight champion, Dominick Cruz, but now with us in studio at Boston Anik, Jason Anik. So you went Boston Anik with the social media handle back in the day. Say hi to Ken Flo.
What's up, Flo? Oh, that's my boy right there.
What's happening, dude?
You feeling a little better this week, kid?
Definitely feeling better. A little under the weather last week. Feeling much better. I was exhausted the last couple of days too. But anyway, it's good to see you, dude.
You too, brother. You'll survive. You know, I'm looking across the table here at this guy. You know, had a little heat on this weekend with this guy, but we'll try and keep it nice for everybody.
Yeah, it's the land of cordiality right here. We're going to be super friendly. We got Mike Malott coming up at the bottom of the hour. So you and our producer, Cody Merrill, played in a basketball game with Mike Malott. He's a big hockey guy. Yeah. Was he a really good hockey player this day?
Well, I believe he was, but I have to say, I mean, most of the hockey players, and Kenny can probably attest to this, in Massachusetts, you got a lot of good hockey players. Hockey players don't play basketball and vice versa. And I got injured a lot playing pickup basketball with my hockey friends who were just violent. But Malott played some good defense. His athleticism was felt out there. We'll get to that with the Canadian a little bit later.
So we were talking to Ray Longo on Monday, and I think a lot of us that work in this space, we don't want to admit like that we were jonesing for UFC action because we want to lean into that respite. And we hope that this ESPN partnership continues forever and we get that 3-week stretch at the end of the year, because a lot of us do burn it at all ends all year long. But Jay, to what extent were you bemoaning the fact that there has been no UFC to either bet on or watch over the last few Saturday nights?
Well, even for me as a huge NFL fan, I still miss it tremendously. I cannot wait for this weekend. I'm going to try and get both of you guys to go live during the main event too. We'll see how that goes. Probably babysitting though, both of you.
We were talking about that. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Kenny wants fan interest. Kenny wants people to tell him that it's a good idea to counter program the UFC's audio and for us to crack the mic on the Anik and Florian podcast YouTube channel before he's going to actually commit.
Well, it's just another good excuse for us to like call fights, kind of.
Yeah, right? And we don't get the chance to do that anymore yet, as it were.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Look at this. Hey, can you hear us, champ, or what?
I can hear you. What's up, guys?
Gosh, man, you're so fucking handsome. Now joining us, former 2-time UFC bantamweight champion, Dominick Cruz is with us.
Let's go. Guy.
So Cruzy.
You know what? It made me red right off the bat.
That's a difficult thing to do to Dominick.
So we were talking at one point this week, and we're taping our show on StreamYard, and we appreciate your time, about they have this button on this StreamYard device, application, whatever it is, that you can touch up your appearance, you know? And I don't know if you can see me now, Dom, but, you know, I look a little bit prettier when I hit this button that says touch up your appearance. So I was just letting you know, this is not like the real article. Like, you know, you look like you're about to go train or you just train. We're all in here in our touched up studio. So
you know exactly what I'm doing. And I figured that's why you had the mom hat on, like to cover up
the
bad hair, bad hair or whatever.
So we appreciate the time. You see my twin bro here. Your friend is in studio. I don't know if you can see all this, Tom. We got a brand new studio in South Florida if you ever want to come down here.
Man, they say that, you know, when the sperm is fighting to the egg, that only one of a billion make it. I am so glad 2 of you made it. You guys are just literally one of a kind.
Well, that means a lot. That really, that means a lot. We've received a lot of wayward comments and compliments over the years as twins, but never that. So that means a lot. All right. I want to get into you because we know your time is valuable. But those who have been tracking you on Instagram would acknowledge that it looks as though you have been training hard for the better part of 8 to 10 weeks or so. So how do you feel physically and where are you at right now?
Yeah, I feel really good and building the body back up. I went and got stem cells done at CPI to do great work because I had a reconstructed shoulder already. And then after the last fight that I competed, while getting right back on the horse, I partial little tear in a different place. So I shot it with stem cells, feeling much better now. And, you know, back on the horse, and I'm building the body up so that if the potential can come up for the right fight for me to jump in there, of course, I'd like to get in there on a couple weeks notice, or, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do when it comes to planning something, but right now I'm just building the body up.
Are there a few guys that you have in mind? Because, you know, you're at a point in your career, you know, former champion, you fought the who's who in that division. I'd imagine it has to be some kind of fight that is interesting to you, right? At the very least.
Yeah, well, the thing about this, I don't really need to fight now. And we know this, Kenny. Like I could, go start my endeavors elsewhere. I enjoy fighting, and my body can still do it. And I'm working through that point right there. And as I keep building the body up, you know what it is, man. You train for 12 weeks straight, nonstop. You spar for, another 6 weeks after that. You're like, okay, let's get in there and really go put it on the line. But the reason why ring rust doesn't exist for me and why I state that is because I don't just take fights when my body's not prepared to do so. I want to make sure I'm at the highest level. And so, in the meantime, I work and I get to serve the fighters and work for the fighters in a sense by explaining what they're doing on TV. And so I have the gift of getting to do that so I can afford the luxury to get the gift of being allowed to fight. It's not It's not a forever thing. And so I enjoy doing it. I get to do it. When this sport began, I paid money to do it. It was a way to stay out of trouble. You know, it was illegal on every stage. So it's at a time now where everybody's looking at it as, what's the reason you're doing this? Well, there was a time when you didn't have a reason. There was just, I enjoyed fighting. That did exist. It's kind of gone wayward now because all the money and the stardom and everything else. But there was a time where people just enjoyed challenging themselves on the deepest level. I'm one of those people. And I'm just making sure that the body is as ready as can be so that when I take that challenge, I'm prepared for, you know, the top 15 on earth in my division, probably.
I love it, man. I love that mindset. You know, when you first came into the sport and when you were fighting, you know, in the WEC, for example, to start to where you're at now, what do you think is like the biggest misconception you had about the sport? Like, what did you have wrong when you saw the sport back in the WEC days to compare to how you see it now?
I don't know if it was wrong. It was just, what did I like? Yeah, I know what you mean by that. Like, how did I had resistance to certain pieces of it. And the pieces that I had resistance to were definitely the marketing side. I didn't understand it then. I didn't understand anything except fighting. That was literally it. And I had to learn on the go. And I did. I was grateful to actually have a rivalry against Uriah Faber, who actually on the other side of things, and that's what I resisted about him most, embraced the marketing aspects of it. And I didn't understand that at all. I was just pissed about it. And I just wanted to smash anybody who did it. And that was it. And then I had to learn. I got the gift of, you know, you have to, in this sport, you get the gift of self-reflection, or you can point the finger. But every time you point the finger, there's three fingers pointing back. So I got a lot of time, wins, losses, or draws, to have the self-reflection to realize the things that were missing, that weren't. Mm-hmm. I'll take you back to one story in particular that I haven't talked about, that I was thinking about the other day. I had just beat Takai Mizugaki in a minute after, a long layoff that everybody said I was doing something that nobody could ever do. Ring rust exists, blah, blah, blah. He's been on his knees out a million times. He won't be the same, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff. And I get done and I win, and I come up to the top, and I'm sitting next to Connor, and he's got his pearl white suit on and his hair up in his Viking, with a Viking look going on at that time.
Yeah.
And he shakes my hand and he goes, "Very nice fight. You're a legend, OG in the sport, whatever," like very kind. And then he goes, "Man, you should go up there and grab those belts. Just stand up with them right on your shoulders and just tell everybody that you're here and that you're the champion." And I remember looking at him thinking, well, he's really good. He's going to rise right up. And this is what up and comers look like. But I'm just going to keep quiet. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to be respectable and humble, because I don't know what comes next. I just don't know what comes next. And that's not marketing. Marketing is do it. Apologize later if you need to. Maybe. That's marketing. And I didn't. I went the respectful, and those are moments in time I look back at and think that's the difference in marketing versus not. It's, do you get up there and while I believed in myself, I just had a different direction in my mind. Whereas Connor would grab that up, went up there, grabbed the belt, threw him over his shoulder, and did the whole marketing thing, and he believed it as much as I believed. He just showed it on camera differently. And that he personified it differently. And that's what's had people connect to him. And that's what's not disconnected, but those are the little moments in time we all have as athletes to take these gifts and show them to the world. And, some people say that's WWE, that's fake, that's this. No, it's authentic. You got to be willing to put your butt on the line in those moments. And, I ended up blowing my knee out 6 weeks later. So who knows if that would have made me think differently, if I would have gone up and done that and then said, oh, maybe I put too much pressure and that's why I blew my knee out. I didn't do any of that. Blew my knee out anyway. I never had any of that to think about. I just had another year of rehab to do after that anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is that's the one moment I have where I look back and there's times where I had to, embrace the marketing aspect of things. And, it just wasn't in my persona. It wasn't in my personality. And I'm good with that, but it's a notice that I have because I've been next to the people who did.
So what would you say about the time that you, me, and TJ Dillashaw were filming one of the first few episodes of Counterpunch, right? And essentially you guys are going at it before you're going to fight. And going in there, right? You are the paid UFC and Fox talking head, right? You're the guy everybody's saying, oh, he's the smartest man in MMA. And you're the guy who, just being authentically you, can cut down an opponent, pretty viscerally. So you're going in there to that setting and TJ doesn't have much to say. And when the three of us were in there, he didn't want to be there. So what was your mentality going in there, knowing that you sort of had to carry that, even if maybe you had to step a little bit outside of character?
Well, see, that's a great example. Thanks for saying that, Anik, because I could see in him what I just explained in myself. He didn't want to be there. And so I could simply say, oh, he hates this more than I do. This is going to be easy.
Right.
It's like, he can't stand this. This guy cannot stand this part of the sport. He just despises that. He just wants to get in there and rip your head off, spit down your throat, flip you off on the way out, laugh at you. And people love that about him. But that's simple to me. It's simple-minded. And so that was fun. That was just, I made that fun because it's simple-minded. He wanted it simple, and it wasn't going to be that simple. That's the problem with becoming champion, is you think it's going to be done and your career just starts in that moment. It doesn't even start till you get a championship. And you realize, oh, the work's just beginning. I have 3 more jobs than I had before I even had a job. I work more now than I ever worked before. You don't work less. You don't get opportunities. Creates more work if you're willing to take the opportunities, or you just don't, and then everything passes you right by. Being a champion is an opportunity to get a lot of different things put on the table, and you get to take those responsibilities and run with them, or they crash and burn you. I feel like.
No, there's no doubt. All right. So I have a few things that I researched today in advance of your appearance. And by the way, it is former 2-time UFC bantamweight champion Dominick Cruz with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. Dominick Cruz, MMA.com is now live, by the way, if you're curious, or you want some merchandise. Actually, you can actually see Dominick Cruz wearing his own merchandise. They have fucking masks, by the way. Jay, can you think of anybody in the world less likely to sell masks than fucking Dominick Cruz?
Are you the executive on that website?
There is one thing, like my grandma. If there's one person that can get me to say, okay, Grandma, we're going to put them on there for you.
Is that why? That's amazing.
Yeah, they're there, Grandma, okay? I beg her not to wear it. They say, show your pretty face. Let's see that smile. But what are you going to tell your grandma?
Oh, that's
grandma
amazing.
Who's going to argue?
That's a good counter. Per usual, Dom's got the counter.
So I was like,
So you were on track to receive a wrestling scholarship to Northern Colorado. You got injured your senior year of high school. Is that right?
Oh, what a surprise, huh? Keep the story going. We had to start it young. Of course I did. And hurt my ankle, didn't do as well as I should have, which relayed me to fighting, and it worked out perfectly. It pissed me off just enough to fight on the weekends, every weekend. And
all right, so
but we've gone into that. We've gone into that old story. You don't want me to bore everybody with that, Anik. Come on.
No, I guess I didn't know it was Northern Colorado, I guess. And it just struck me as a fresh detail in advance of our conversation today. But in the nature of time,
I guess. Yeah, but I didn't
go ahead.
It. But yes, in the nature of time, go.
Well, no, in the nature of time, I was just going to sort of piggyback upon something you said earlier, because I think a lot of our listeners or viewers would hear you talk about, a couple weeks notice and be like, geez, why is that even a possibility for Dominick Cruz? But as you and I have discussed, right? You're in a unique position. You got the number 10 next to your name, but it might as well be the number 1, because all of these guys want to fight you. And it would be an amazing accomplishment for all of these guys to be able to beat the consensus greatest bantamweight of all time. So You are somebody who likes his birthday, I guess, more than the average man, if I can say that, right? Like it is March 9th. So UFC 299, there happen to be 4 high-profile bantamweights competing on that card. UFC 300 is April 13th. I think all the fight fans would like to see you on that card, even if it was a fight that was preceded by a training camp. But at least can you tell our listeners that like UFC 299 and UFC 300 and 299 being 2 months from tomorrow are not necessarily out of the question.
One of the things I love about you, Anik, is you're like a real fan of all of us fighters, and it makes it refreshing to talk to somebody who really wants to know what the hell's going on with the fighter. Like it's because you pass that on to the audience. So thank you for that. And I'll tell you that I would love to announce a fight right now, okay? But I'm not doing that, Anik. I'm not. I'm not going to announce. I'm not going to make an announcement right now for you. As much as you would love it, I'm just going to train my ass off like I always do to be prepared for a championship style fight. To come back and fight as hard as physically possible. Now, getting the body to that point is what I'm challenging right now. I'm throwing my body in the ringer, and if I can get this thing together in those times, I'm in it. But I'm talking to Hunter. So Hunter is the man. Hunter knows what's going on, right? Sean Shelby, been working with Shelby forever. He knows what's going on. If I can plan something out and get in there, it's happening this year. That's the goal. That's what I want to do.
All right, my man, I will get you out of here on this if I could. And I'm not necessarily expecting any long-winded answer, right? But I went on Sean O'Malley's strength and conditioning coach, Brandon Harris's podcast, The Higher Human, I believe it's called, right? And one thing that I talked about to this man who is largely in charge with building the body and mind and breathing capability of Sean O'Malley is Sean's durability. You know, it is something that has plagued him at least twice in the octagon. We were also told going into the Aljamain Sterling fight that had he been taken down one time, it was going to be a wrap because he went into that fight injured. So given everything that you have endured and learned, what would you say to somebody like Sean O'Malley, who's trying to begin this championship era, knowing that his body at times has failed?
Again, what a great point. You have so much insight with all these other people, Anik, so thanks for saying that again. And so that you know I have time. So we're good. And
thank you.
As far as O'Malley being champion, I think that what I'm saying is more what every champion probably wants to say, but can't because you're champion. So the line that I'm taking with, let me get this body ready, and then I'll jump in there on 6 weeks notice and jump into because I'm already, usually get 12 weeks of a camp. For a title fight, he'll get, if he's lucky, unless they pay him extra, then he'll have to take one short notice. If they give you enough incentive, you'll take one short notice hurt. So otherwise you get 12 weeks, right? So they'll give him 12 weeks. And I think every fighter every champion wants to say what I'm saying, which is, okay, let me just make sure I'm good in this. Right. Give me the best guy on earth. Give me the best guy on earth. But you don't get that when you're champion. You're running the division. You're the reason it's marketed. You're the thing that's pissing everybody off underneath you so that everybody watches and is chomping at the bit to kill you. He's in that position. That makes getting injured easier from my experience because of the mental stress, the mental fatigue that goes on with, everybody can pretend, right? Like, I just saw an interview with Henry Cejudo saying, like, oh, you can't show your vulnerabilities. Well, you can, if you've dealt with them in yourself, then they don't attack you and other people throw them at you because you've already seen them, you've already been with them, you've already sat with them, you've already understood them. So, yeah, you've got to be able to say these things out loud. You've got to be able to admit that they exist. Otherwise, what you resist persists, and it's going to keep nagging at your brain. This is a mental game. It's a longevity sport. Mm-hmm. You can't have stuff like that nagging at you. So as champion, having all these people wanting to take him out, he's very famous, and he talks a lot too. So all that's gonna, do more to getting healthy. Now you've got to get healthy because your butt's on the line. You've said things that put your butt on the line. So get healthy and get in there and prove it. Can he prove it? Yes, he's skilled enough. But I love what you're saying, that there's a reality to getting, no matter how skilled you are, what percentage are you going into the fight after preparing your body to be that level of athlete? So like I've had to put myself through such a ringer that if I can get to the end of it, it's like, okay, I'm unbeatable. I'm unbeatable with what I just went through and didn't get injured. Now I can go in the fight. There's no way this person hurts me. There's just absolutely no way. But if I go through the camp 8 weeks in, my back throws out, I'm out for 2 weeks, come back, do another, my shoulder starts to tighten up after 2 weeks into that, got to take a few days off here and there. Like, how many champions has that happened to? I mean, countless. We're all going in there. So how does that play out moving into title fights is always the missing tangible, because they're also, guys like Adesanya fighting 3-4 times in a year for title fights. That's incredible. It really is. Usman did that as well. And I've done 3 title fights in a year, and for many years I've done that. And when you do that, it's a different thing on your body with the pressure and you're carrying the interviews, and you're making sure that even though people don't want to be there, that you piss them off enough that they've got to be there.
Right.
You're leading these things. O'Malley is that guy right now. O'Malley is leading these things. He's got the tools to do it. He's got the mouthpiece to do it. He's got the character to do it. He's from Arizona, so I know he's tough enough to do it.
There you go.
That's where he's out there. And I'm watching. I've been there. I know what he's going through. I could be there again tomorrow. It's like, I know I'm not good, but I get to say, let me make sure my body's ready. He doesn't have that luxury. He's got to just go in there, right, Kenny?
Absolutely, man. How do you see his fight against Cheeto, dude? Who do you think has the upper hand in that one?
Honestly, like when I go into that fight, it's like Vera can take a lot of damage and he's in good shape. So like I just said, it depends on how hurt O'Malley is going into that fight, like how bad are his injuries going into that one. If he was hurt in this last one that bad, like, can he go into this fight with Vera like that?
Well, right. See that? Yeah. It's interesting.
It's real though. It's like, this is always the case. It's not like it's not like we're just talking about it so it exists now. It's this is always how it is. It's just I'm the one talking about it. And none of these guys want to admit it, probably, but whatever, it's here. Like I said, don't be admitting this to people. You should keep your cards close. Well, at a certain point, it's like, we all know this is happening. Like, you're either hurt or you're not. But I see that fight. You don't know how each of them come into that fight. But I know Vera's durable and he's got good cardio. But he takes a beating in the first 3 rounds by almost everybody he fights. He takes a lot of shots.
Right.
Can he take O'Malley's power in the first couple rounds? I don't know. He did in the first fight, took out his legs. Genius. You take out his legs, he's got no power. The power comes from where your feet are planted. O'Malley plants his feet so much to land that power that Vera was able to attack the legs, and he can do it that way and take him out early again. So that's the thing. Because of O'Malley's style of planting his feet in order to land the power, that gives Vera the chance to take out his legs so he can't, and vice versa. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's like, it's whoever gets out first, right? Like, and then injuries coming in are part of it. And both these guys are, when you're in the top 15, like I am, any of us can literally, with the right layout, be champion. It just really is that way in all these divisions. See, because everybody's that good in these pools. They pick the best guys on earth in these pools.
Shaping up as a huge year for the UFC bantamweight division, and of course the legend Dominick Cruz. When do we see you next on television? Do you know? Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Well, we will see you there at UFC 297, and hope I didn't pry too much today on the dates, buddy. But we look forward to seeing you back in the octagon and back with a microphone in your hand here in a couple weeks, champ.
I know I'm getting called out every week, anyways. So what's the difference?
Right.
Like,
well, there you go.
It is. I just keep preparing my body.
Let's keep hardening that physical, buddy. We appreciate the time, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. All right.
Thanks, buddy. Later, guys.
Peace, Dom. There he is, Dominick Cruz, with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. It's an interesting conversation, and Sean O'Malley actually heard my conversation with Brandon Harris about his durability. Now, it is what it is. I happen to bring it up, but I do think it's interesting. And Kenny, I think Dom's answer is particularly thoughtful, right? Because none of these men nor women are 100%, right? And Dricus du Plessis made a decision to not fight Adesanya in Sydney. And it worked out for him, right? He got the next title fight, but doesn't always work out that way, And I just think a lot of these men and women are dealing with a lot of different things. And I think for Dom, not out of the realm of possibility, he steps in for one of these guys who can't make the walk in a few weeks. So.
No question about it. It gets back to what the martial arts is all about. And what I think about a lot is you not only need to beat someone on your best day, you need to be able to beat someone on your worst day. And that's where it gets really, really tricky, and where you can kind of separate the good from the great, and not an easy thing to balance, man.
I didn't even stick my thumb up, and this StreamYard platform is trying to give me like bells and whistles. So I'm going to keep my hands to myself. But yeah, health is wealth, Jay, obviously. And Chito Vera is nothing if not durable. But it's interesting when you think about someone like Sean O'Malley fighting 3 times. I mean, it's not going to be 3 times in 2024, but I just don't know that he's going to be that type of champion who is going to be stacking training camps and 3 title fights in a year.
Well, regardless of his durability, though, I mean, I definitely saw a physically stronger, certainly in the bottom half in Boston with Sean O'Malley. I guess it had been a year off. So I do think, and these guys do evolve. I'm sick of hearing the cliche about Teddy Atlas champions get 30% better, but like, I do believe that to some extent. And I think O'Malley I just think physically, he is not that easy out he may have been in the past for these guys that could either take him to the ground, or I just don't see that as being sort of a simple path anymore. All right, we got Mike Malott here coming up in a couple minutes. But Kenny, one thing I had written down when Dominick was talking about getting injured his senior year of high school, there are a lot of different paths to MMA and MMA greatness, right? Like Kenny and Dom are very much cut from the same cloth when it comes to wanting to be in there on fight night, and wanting that. Whereas maybe George St. Pierre didn't really want fight night, but maybe was so good at it that he had to go through it. Now, Dom spent a lot of his formative years in a trailer park. And when it came time to maybe go to college without a scholarship, there was no money to do that. So he's trying to become a firefighter. Dom was able to channel whatever happened in his life in the right way. But Kenny, it doesn't always have to be that. But I just think for you guys, like once you get this itch, and for you, maybe BJJ was the point of entry. But once you get this itch to, prove yourself in that one-on-one combat sports setting, that's a very powerful driving force.
No question about it, man. And you realize how much is at stake, how hard you're working for that particular thing, and how you also you want to know that you gave it your best and that you're bringing your best self out there. And, that's always a tricky thing when you're talking about toughness and competition and bringing it on that night. It's what makes mixed martial arts so damn fascinating, even to this day.
All right, well, coming up on January 20th, and we thank Dominick Cruz for joining us. It is UFC 297, Strickland versus Duplessis, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, Scotiabank Arena. And if you hear an extra pep in my voice, it is because proper Mike Malott is with us. Mike, John, and Kenny here. My twin brother, Jason, your basketball teammate, with us as well. How are you today, my man?
What's going on, boys? Thanks for having me on the show. I'm great, man. Just finished up a nice, tough, long practice. Feeling great. Feeling like I'm ready for it to be fight week, man.
Well, we are almost there, brother, and we're only going to take about a quarter of an hour of your time, but I have so many different fascinating things to talk to you about. And I think a lot of our listeners don't know in totality what your mixed martial arts career has held up until this point. But January 20th against Neil Magny, it's live on pay-per-view. Now, you were born in Burlington, Ontario. So where do you live now in relation to where this fight is going down? And where did you grow up relative to where this is all going down coming up January 20th?
Yeah, so I grew up about 45 minutes from where the fight's taking place in Toronto. It's the Scotiabank Arena now, but all my friends and everyone in the area that's watching this knows it as the ACC, the Air Canada Centre. That was the spot where the Leafs the Leafs play. And when I was a kid, that was the best day of the year when my dad would come home and say, "Put the homework down. You're not going after school activities. You're not doing homework. I got tickets from work. We're going to watch the Leafs play." So this has been like the arena my entire life. The ACC, I've been visualizing myself fighting, or when I was even younger, hopefully playing hockey in that arena. But now it's UFC 297. I now live in the Niagara region, so I live about 15 minutes from Niagara Falls, which is we're about an hour 20, probably an hour 20, hour 30 from Toronto, obviously depending on traffic. But it's awesome, man. I'm probably going to be staying most of the week at my parents' house in Burlington, 40 minutes from the arena, 40 minutes from where we have to do everything. So, go do my my media obligations, go sign posters, kiss babies, whatever we're doing, and then head back to Burlington and sleep at my parents' house for the week.
So I'd imagine you're happy to have had that experience in Vancouver, because fighting on that card, you were the biggest Canadian MMA name on that card as well, albeit it wasn't in your backyard. It sounds like this is going to be like for Ken Flo walking out at the Boston Garden, just like maybe an entirely different thing, or not necessarily?
I think in a lot of ways it'll be similar. You know, I didn't realize going into fight week last time how many people knew who I was or how much support I was going to get. I knew I was the last Canadian on the card, and you know, I thought, you know, some people would know who I was, but I did have a pretty big reception from the fans, and it was incredible, man. Like it just energized me that week, and I'm really looking forward to it this time. Like the UFC asked me after the fight, like, okay, when do you want to fight next? I'm like, when are you coming back to Canada next? Because that card absolutely spoiled me. Like going into that press conference and hearing the crowd and having the crowd chanting my name, like, dude, I don't want to go back to Apex fights after that if I don't have to. Like, I want to fight in Canada every time if I can, man. Like, you know, this is such a cool experience, and I think it's just going to be even bigger this time. You know, obviously last time there were some unforeseen circumstances, like the crowd almost falling on us while I'm walking out, and you know, so
that's right. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, was able to deal with that. Honestly, I forgot about it till we got backstage, and one of my coaches pulled a phone out. He's like, "Dude, how close were they to hitting you?" You see, like the guy actually lands on my shoulder for a second. But man, that's just like a short little test. Like you're on the way to the biggest moment of your life. Like you're fighting in the UFC in Canada. You're the final Canadian. You have to hold down the fort, and then something like that happens. Like the crowd almost falls on you. Like, how do you react? Do you crumble? Do you get distracted? Do you start spiraling? It's like, no, man, I stayed laser focused, and I'm really proud of how I dealt with that situation. So that just tells me that if and when things that I wasn't able to foresee happen leading up to this fight or in this fight, I know I'll stay laser focused. I know I'll be able to fight through things. Like I know I'll be able to adapt because I believe in myself.
Dude, that Vancouver, I'm glad you brought that up, because John, you ask him like if it could be better. Like I don't know how it gets better. If I'm not mistaken, all 5 of the other Canadians had won, right? So a little pressure there, right? And then clearly, I mean, you were the star of that show. It was epic. And then there's a lot of pressure on you there. And then to get that second round finish, I mean, and the stands falling. I mean, a lot of us didn't know what happened on the other side of the arena, but there is some pressure when you are the guy people are coming there for. I've been to a lot of these fights, whether it's Kazmat Chimaev or Ian Gary, who, you know, you're that guy who they maybe dim the lights for when you're not the co-main or the main event. You'll be in a nice spot here as the featured fight, right? 3 from the main event, right?
Yeah. So they did the extra long walkout last time. They're like, all right, we're going to play your walkout song, and then for 15 seconds, we're going to let the crowd build up. And they let them build up maybe just a little bit too much in that one. But, you know, honestly, like a word you mentioned there that I address a lot is, you know, that pressure. It's like you can view it as pressure if you want, but I'm a kid from Waterdown, Ontario, Canada, who fell in love with the UFC when he was 12 or 13 years old and has just been obsessed with trying to find a way to make it to this level. And I'm here now representing my country on pay-per-view in stadiums throughout our country and around the world. Like, that's not pressure to me. That's privilege. Like, I get to do this. I've been wanting to do this my whole life. I've been dreaming of it. You know, I used to sit in English class staring out the window in high school and daydream about this while I should have been paying attention. And like, my mind was always on this. And now, like, this is coming to fruition. This isn't pressure for me. This is privilege. Like, I cannot wait to get in there. I don't want it to like fly by like, oh man, I just want it to be fight day. I want the next 12 days. I want fight week. I want to go to the media, the media day and answer these questions. I want to go to the press conference. I want to cut weight. I want to feel that pain while sitting in the tub and sitting in the sweating and being dehydrated. And I want to feel that first sip of Pedialyte after the weigh-ins. And I want to go get in front of that crowd on the scale. And I want the crowd to cheer for me. And I want to get in my opponent's face and let him know whose home he's in. Like, I want all of this. So this isn't pressure for me. This is privilege. Like, I have energy just thinking about how exciting this is going to be.
You're getting me fired up too, Mike. You know, you don't have this long UFC career, but you speak like a veteran of like 20, 30 fights in the UFC. And you've also shown a lot in just a few fights in the UFC. We've seen you dominate. We've seen you battle back from adversity. You know, where do you get this mindset from and this resilience? Is it from just competing your whole life? Do you have a sports psychologist that you work with? Where does this wisdom come from?
So I think there's a lot of factors. I appreciate you saying that. I think there's a lot of factors playing into that. Number one, my mental coach, Danny Patterson, is the best in the game. And I've been working with him for 11 years now. So we've had a long foundation laid here. This isn't me like trying to play catch up leading into a big a big event where I feel pressure and I'm like, okay, how do I deal with this? We've been dealing with this for over a decade. I then also took some time away from competing in MMA while I was at Team Alpha Male and took a coaching role. So I've cornered something like 25 fights in the UFC. I've cornered hundreds on hundreds of fights in MMA in general, whether it's professional, regional, amateur, whatever. Cornered hundreds of fights, but I've cornered like 25 UFC fights. So I think part of that comfort comes from, this might only be my fifth walk to a UFC octagon. One of them, one of those fights was Contender Series, but I count it. But might only be my fifth walk as the fighter to the cage, but I've made fight week. I've been there for fight week 25 times on top of my fight. So 30 times total. Now I've been to fight week. I've been to the poster signings. I've seen what media day is like. I've seen what it's like to cut weight at the PI or at these hotels and then go to the official weigh-ins and then the ceremonial weigh-ins and get on those shuttles. Like I know the people who work for the UFC. I've known these guys for years. They're friends of mine. Like, the blue shirt guys, like I know all these guys, and like, so this is comfortable. I've been here 30 times. I had like 25 dry runs before I stepped in the cage for my UFC debut or for my Contender Series fight. Right. So I have what I think is an enormous advantage over most guys where I feel like I've been in there 25, 30 times, but I haven't had the damage of fighting 30 times in the UFC. So it's kind of like this cheat code that I have. Right. And then the final thing is like how I changed maybe how I talk to myself, like that coaching time, I feel like changed how I speak to myself because I look at how I coach, like would talk to my, self-talk, negative self-talk before I got into fighting. And I was like, started treating myself like my own fighter, like I'm my own coach. I'm like, I would never speak to one of my fighters the way I was speaking to myself, like to get the most out of them. So why would I speak to myself like that? So now I feel like I have a lot better self-talk through kind of those experiences. But a long answer there. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's gone in. Of course, just like the amount of places I've trained and the hard work I've put in and like all the stuff you'd expect. But those are kind of like the other factors that, maybe.
That's huge, man. That's huge. You could tell.
Thanks, buddy.
It is just so interesting. And I'm sure I've asked you this in a fighter meeting, but if you don't know, February 2017, you win the XFFC lightweight championship, and then you didn't compete at all in MMA until December of 2020. And it's hard for me to think of a comp in MMA where a fighter could leave for that amount of time and now be on this UFC championship trajectory. And I guess I'm curious if you were ever of a mindset where you ever, close the door on being an undisputed UFC champion, because I wonder if you have zero regret at all for that time. It sounds like there's a ton of positive from that time in your career, but gosh, a lot of fans are wondering like, man, can you imagine if this dude was competing, just how good he might already be a UFC champion?
I have zero regret on that time. So like I said, all those things I learned, whether it's, walking to the cage, I got all those experiences and wouldn't have gotten those experiences as a coach had I been fighting this whole time. I might not have learned how I need to be, how I need to talk to myself and how I need to structure practices or structure training camps or, there are tons of things that I learned through that time of stepping away from MMA that I wouldn't have learned had I stuck around. And I completely closed the door to MMA. I was like, dude, I'm super happy to coach my friends, but I have no desire to be where you guys are. I just enjoy this. And I love training jiu-jitsu. My focus switched to competing in jiu-jitsu. So I got my black belt in jiu-jitsu, had a bunch of super fights, won a bunch of tournaments, went from being like an okay, decent purple belt to like a pretty high level black belt in jiu-jitsu. So kind of rounded my game out. So I might not have taken that time had I been so focused on MMA to really dive into jiu-jitsu and grappling and wrestling as much as I did. So I feel like while I definitely could have gotten to the UFC earlier and faster, where you're like, man, I wonder what he could have been had he stayed there. It's like, what would I have been doing, being on a main card pay-per-view in, a few weeks? Like, we made it there anyway, baby. Like, I'm about to be ranked in the top 15. Like, maybe took a little bit longer, but it's like a fine age whiskey. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just gotta let it age a little bit.
And just seeing all of your former Team Alpha Male teammates and how joyful they are with your success tells me all I need to know about how good a guy you are. They're all just so happy for you. And a guy, Mike Malott, who's pretty universally beloved across this UFC family and across the roster as well. Before we let you go, you are fighting Neil Magny on January 20th. So big challenge, long guy. What are your thoughts on potentially being ranked and taking his number and what we might see at the Old Air Canada Center come January 20th?
Yeah, man. Number one, I'm focused on myself, right? I've put so much preparation into this game where, of course, I take things into consideration. We study my opponent. But, people talk about the reach. I've had 4 fights with the UFC so far, and in all of those fights, I've had all of my opponents have had reach advantages on me, and I've only absorbed 23 strikes in 4 fights total. So, like, the last guy I fought had 4-inch reach advantage on me, barely touched me. Guy before that, 3-inch reach advantage on me, landed 1 strike. Contender series, I didn't get hit. Like, you're gonna have to bring a lot more to the cage than a reach advantage to make me feel intimidated. Like, I've been preparing for this since I got in the UFC. So what's a couple extra, a little bit longer reach advantage? It doesn't faze me. I know how to take away reach advantages. I know how to exploit, I know how to nullify that and turn that into a deficit for him or turn that into a detriment.
All right, well, there are going to be a lot of loud ovations at UFC 297 come January 20th in Toronto, but safe to say the loudest one will probably be reserved for this man, proper Mike Malott. You can see him compete live on pay-per-view. My man, very much appreciate the time. Can't wait to shake your hand at the fighter meeting here in a few days, and we look forward to that walk Saturday night, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me on the show. We'll see you next week.
Good luck, bro. Proper Mike Malott with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. And Ken Flo obviously got to compete at TD Garden. Kenny, it's just nothing like it, right? I mean, growing up, going to games, and then walking through that tunnel as the professional athlete, that's as good as it gets, I would think.
Absolutely, man. It's nuts. And you definitely need to know how to manage emotions. Like, I remember hearing boos when I was fighting Gray Maynard because we were just circling. Like, he didn't want to come forward. It was just there were boring times in that fight. And I was like, oh man, I got to do something which would then get me to get taken down or something. Yeah. So you can care a lot about those things, but managing those emotions, that's why I really wanted to ask that question, because Malott's mindset, I think, is huge going into this type of a fight.
Yeah.
Where, everyone's going to kind of be on your shoulders there for the ride.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Gray Maynard was so scared that night in Boston, wasn't he, Jay? Just kidding, Gray. Love you, Gray. I'm just kidding.
Quick, though, I just want to say, some of these dudes, I know all these guys on the UFC roster and throughout all professional organizations are professional fighters. But you come across certain dudes that are like, that's a professional athlete. And I know I'm a broken record, but that's a professional athlete. And with mental, physical. Yes. Yeah, I agree. And Kenny, that's why I find this huge gap to be so just compelling and interesting when it comes to Mike Malott, right? Because he did close the door on being an undisputed UFC champion at a time when most fighters don't do that. Yet he was completely immersive when it came to mixed martial arts and coaching it and everything else. It's one thing to make a decision to come back and fight. It's another thing to actually contend for the title. And the UFC is putting him in a position this weekend to get on that course. It's pretty insane.
No question about it. Jason, you nailed it, man. And it's those little things at the highest levels that can make the difference when you're doing something, let's say, like having a sports psychologist or something simple like that really could change the game for you. But he's a true professional, man. I can't wait to see him compete.
Kenny, to what extent, I know we got to get on out of here. Like, Dominick Cruz has leaned so much into the self-work in terms of working on his mind. I know it's a much bigger thing now, sports psychology, than it even was in your fighting prime. But to what extent did you ever talk to, mental men or women?
Yeah, I did. I started meeting with a sports psychologist, I think actually after the Gray Maynard fight, in fact. Yeah. And just how you can let little things influence decision making or your approach or your mental attitude leading into a fight, and like how do you keep your boundaries and keep your mental space healthy and at your best, and that can be a tricky thing when you have a lot of things either going on outside of the cage, leading up to the cage, like injuries. So yeah, Dom is one of those guys always looking for that edge, and so much of it comes from that mental perspective and how you're able to approach this game.
I need to work on myself. I need a fucking psychotherapist, but we got to get on out of here. You can catch Jason with Bilal Muhammad on the Anik and Florian podcast YouTube channel every Thursday. They're live. Check out johnanik.com for all Anik and Florian podcast merchandise. One More Sleep designs are in the works as well. Kenny Florian, Mashalotts.com is live, and check out Argus Integrated Defense. My favorite follow on Instagram. All right, we might be with you Saturday night live on the Anik and Florian podcast YouTube channel for the main event between Magomed Ankalaev and Johnny Walker. So kindly let Kenny know at Kenny Florian if you want him to do a live broadcast this Saturday night, and we hope to see you there. Thanks to everybody at DraftKings. Our executive producer is Cody Merrow. Thanks to our guests today, Dominick Cruz, Brian Petrie, Prop and Mike Malott. We'll see you next week. We're talking UFC 297, Strickland versus Duplessis. With that, for Jason, Anik, and Kenny Florian, I'm John Anik. Thank you all for watching, for listening. Tell your dad you're mad at your dad. Go later.
Every time I start a verse, I break at least 3 commandments. Kinda like Pluto, because I never plan it. I'm outlandish in the way that make Apaches look like they own ranches. It's the art of war. Your blood's the only color on the canvas. And I don't mean it like a thug sense of how you can get got. Fuck being gangsta, I'm hip-hop. You got it? Every time you walk in the label, the A&R's like nodded. Immune to your shit, cause I circle, dotted. Body heat is toxic. We got a beat, I don't got it. Speak opposite, start to think psychic lick, make the speakers speak elitistly. Off their high horse, make an ass of their views. Your DJ must not know the alphabet, forgetting his cues. My favorite DJ got those and 6 extra L's to abuse. Esoteric John P, and I'm the nuclear school. I'm Raider Ellis, nice to meet you. Short busting my styles. Egocentric, ego tripping with frequent flyer smiles.
DJ wants to get at the bird. He gets at the bird. And bird takes the shot.
You wanna sit it on us? We got Comero.